I've got some searching to do between now and Tuesday.
One more night for Granite Staters to make up their minds before casting ballots in the First in the Nation primary.
It's always important. It's the first one.
The field has narrowed, but the campaign trail is still busy as candidates use every remaining minute to convince undecided voters and set the stage for the rest of the country to pick a president.
You can go throughout human history, and you're never going to find 1.3 million people that had so much direct democracy than the voters of New Hampshire.
This is a WMUR Commitment 2024 special, New Hampshire primary, the final hours.
And good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this special coverage on the eve of the New Hampshire primary. I'm Jennifer Vaughn.
I'm Steve Botori. At this point, a lot of energy, a lot of emotion, and also a lot of legwork about to be put to the test as these presidential candidates close out their last night of campaigning here in New Hampshire.
We are now less than 2 hours away from the very first ballots in Dixville Notch, and just a few hours after that, polls around the state will open to Granite voters.
So let's take you up north, a live look at the room where the midnight voting is going to happen. In fact, this is the only spot where midnight voting is happening in our state this time around. In other parts of the state, meanwhile, campaign events are just wrapping up.
And we will have live reports on those events coming up in just a moment. But first, there are new developments tonight in a lawsuit over the New Hampshire ballot. A judge has denied the request from a little-known Republican candidate to take former President Trump's name off the ballot. This was the second lawsuit filed by John Castro. The first was thrown out, and as of late today, the second suit is also dismissed.
At this moment, the former president, you can see live pictures here speaking at an event in Laconia, another New Hampshire venue. He's been here pretty much every night this week holding these rallies. WMUR's Marissa Tansino is live outside this venue with the latest details. Marissa.
Well, Steve, the former president's supporters started to file in here just after 6 o'clock. The former president himself starting to speak just after 9 o'clock. And within the first 10 minutes, he brought 3 men on the stage who used to be his opponents. That's Vivek Ramaswamy, Senator Tim Scott, and Doug Burgum. Now, Ramaswamy, even when running against Trump, always supported the former president. They all encouraged people to get out and vote for Trump tomorrow in the First in the Nation primary. The former president doing the same. He said tomorrow is an important day for people in New Hampshire and says he believes the state will speak louder than any other place in the country.
Get out of bed and just get to vote. Grab your neighbor, grab everybody. You gotta go out because we have to win by big margins. And the reason we have to do that, Al, very simple. You know what the reason is in November? We have to send the signal that we're not playing games.
So now the former president also taking several shots at Governor Chris Sununu and Nikki Haley while on the stage, saying he thinks Nikki Haley will be out of the race after tomorrow. We're live in Laconia. Marissa Tansino, WMUR News 9.
Marissa, thank you. You just mentioned her earlier tonight. Nikki Haley wrapping up her final event of the night and her last night before primary day.
WMUR's Ariel Metropolis is live now with the message Haley left with New Hampshire voters.
Jen, Steve, this was Haley's last major opportunity to get in front of voters before primary day. We can show you some of our video from earlier in the night. The room was just packed with voters and with members of the press. There are now, of course, just 2 major Republican candidates in this race, and we've been covering this campaign for many months now, and tonight you could really feel and see the increased attention on this campaign. Just in the last few days, Haley has had about 24 events all over the state in what seems like a much more traditional campaign with stops at coffee shops and schools compared to President Trump's campaign. You just saw Marissa mention it with those major rallies, but she was met with a lot of enthusiasm tonight.
Because we could have that. But in order to do that, it's going to take a lot of courage. Courage from everyone in this room and in the overflow room.
And Haley plans to hold an election night party tomorrow night in Concord as the results roll in. We're live in Salem tonight. Ariel Metropolis, WMUR News 9.
Okay, bringing in WMUR political director Adam Sexton now. And I mean, we're wrapping things up, right? Almost all of the official campaign events are over. Former President Donald Trump still speaking in Laconia, but they've left it all out there now. So what is the preview ahead of Election Day? I mean, this is going to come down to turnout, you think?
Right, absolutely. And I think for the campaigns, it can be an agonizing day because they're keeping track of, who's turning out and whatnot. And this is one unique aspect, again, of a very unique primary. The Trump campaign is much more organized this time than it was in 2016. They were kind of just flying by the seat of their pants. A lot of enthusiasm. It was like rocket fuel. They were going. This time around, they're more organized. They're probably going to have a better read on what their numbers are coming in. The other campaigns, though, are relatively light footprint. So get out the vote operations, things like that. They're going to have that stuff, but it's not going to be at the same level that we would see even in our, U.S. Senate races here in New Hampshire, where you have super organized efforts, tons of buses, that kind of stuff, because they have so many more contests to go. They can't just blow it all on New Hampshire.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so in less than 2 hours from right now, we're watching very closely for 6 registered voters in Dixville Notch to make their decision. What impact, if any, taking a live look there in the room, what impact, if any, Adam, does Dixville even have for us?
This is all about splash. And there's been some criticism over the last few years of how real this event is, but it's always been about the media and excitement and kind of getting that first look at how the voters of New Hampshire might vote. Obviously, it's a very narrow slice of the electorate because it's the guy who owns the hotel now and some of the people who work there and his friends, right? So, and the Tillotsons, but this is so huge because it always kind of just sets the tone. And 4 years ago, they had this thing where they all kind of wrote in Mike Bloomberg, and that was a little weird. But you do get to see, who's coming out of there with a little momentum. And that, these days, those headlines overnight, those, people wake up and they click on the website, they're going to say, oh, so-and-so won Dixville Notch. And you can't discount that. It might convince a couple people, you know what, that's a winner, and I'm going to go with them. So it's something it is so silly in terms of like how small it is, but it's a New Hampshire primary in microcosm, right? Because you've got to participate. These people were taking calls earlier today, from the candidates because they want to win, and everybody's watching at midnight.
And speaking of watching, what areas of the state are you going to be watching tomorrow?
Rockingham County, right? Okay. Republican Central, Derry, big one right there in Rockingham County, the biggest single polling location in the country. If you're a Republican, you've got to clean up on that southern tier. We're going to be watching closely, though, where's Nikki Haley going to do well in those places with the moderate independents? So places like Portsmouth. She's going to want to run up the score there if she's going to do well tomorrow.
Okay, Adam, thanks again. We will see you soon enough. Meantime, President Joe Biden opting not to be on the ballot in the First in the Nation primary state, and 2 major Democratic challengers are hoping that voters send him a message. Congressman Dean Phillips and author Marianne Williamson both held campaign events today. Monica Hernandez in the newsroom with their final pitches before the polls open.
Well, Jen, both candidates are making the case to Granite State voters that they are the ones who can beat Donald Trump in November, and that President Joe Biden cannot. This is Marianne Williamson's second presidential run. She says her economic agenda sets her apart, promising to restore the middle class with things like universal health care and a guaranteed living wage. And she says in New Hampshire, voters on both sides of the aisle are eager to hear your pitch.
Well, it's very obvious that a lot of Granite Staters wait until the last minute to make their decision. Maybe that's unique to this particular year because there's so much turmoil and people are trying to sort of figure out the landscape.
Appalled that President Biden chose to skip the First in the Nation primary, calling it a big mistake not just for New Hampshire but for democracy. He says Biden is, quote, not electable, and that former President Trump is, quote, dangerous. And while he admits his campaign is a long shot, here's what he says he's hoping for when the polls close tomorrow.
It's already been successful. If we're in the 20s, I think it would be a grand slam. He's going to be in probably the 50s or 60s. If it's worse than that for him or better than that for me, watch out.
And, of course, referring to the results for President Joe Biden there, Phillips says no matter the result, he believes he's already won the New Hampshire primary. We'll tell you why, coming up at 10:30. Steve.
All right, Monica, thank you. So with a lot of changes in the primary this year, have we mentioned it's an unusual year? The New Hampshire Secretary of State is providing a preview of what you can expect when you arrive at the polls tomorrow.
WMUR's Tim Callery live in Manchester with what you should know here. Tim?
Well, first things first, bring your ID with you. You will need that when you check in at your polling station. And second, with so many changes happening, that Biden write-in and some of the candidates already gone, the Secretary of State says Granite Staters need to really pay attention when they head into that polling booth.
Well, there's a number of things that are different about this primary.
A primary like no other, says New Hampshire Secretary of State Dave Scanlon.
First is that this is the first time that we have 2 individuals that have served as president that are running for the office of president. And then one of those candidates, President Biden, has chosen not to run in the New Hampshire primary because of the attempt by the Democratic National Committee to shuffle the calendar.
Because of that, Scanlon says moderators may need extra time to hand count any write-in votes for President Biden.
I know the moderators are aware that this might require some extra work, and so they've done a good job enlisting the additional help that they're going to need to count those ballots.
Another wrench thrown in the mix is absentee voting. Some people may have voted days ago for a candidate who is no longer in the race. If you're one of them, the only way you can change your vote is if you go to your local polling place on Election Day and vote before absentee ballots are processed. Absentee ballots are processed at 1 p.m. on Election Day or at least 2 hours after polling locations open, as long as the moderator has given prior public notice.
Usually some fires that flare up on Election Day, but we're ready to deal with those.
They are ready to go up in Concord. Now, another thing to remember, tomorrow is polling times. They do vary from town to town. So if you're not sure when your polls open, it's important to call your election office. Reporting live in Manchester, I'm Tim Callery, WMUR News 9.
All right, Tim, thanks. So look, it may sound a little like President Biden, but the voice and the message are certainly fake. The investigation now underway into what is believed to be an AI-generated robocall scam.
And every New Hampshire primary has unexpected twists and turns, but this one is truly like no other. The events that led up to tonight.
And look, the room is ready in Dixville Notch, where the Granite State and really the world will be watching for the first results in the first in the nation primary, now less than 2 hours. As we've talked about, President Biden is not on the Democratic primary ballot after he chose not to file in New Hampshire because New Hampshire set the election date earlier than when the National Party wanted. But supporters are still pushing for voters tomorrow to write in the president's name on their ballots. News 9 sat down with former Governor John Lynch, who says, while he doesn't agree with the DNC's decision to write off the New Hampshire primary, he is still encouraging Granite Staters to vote.
It's very different if there's an open seat. There's no incumbent. That creates buzz. More candidates run. More credible candidates run. That creates a buzz. Right now, we have a situation where it's unusual. I mean, we have an incumbent not on the ballot.
Governor Lynch and other Democrats are trying to help voters understand how to write in President Biden and trying to convince independent voters to pull the Democratic ballot. Now, tonight there is this new wrinkle in what you could call the usual campaign buzz when it comes to all of this.
That's right. The Attorney General's office is now investigating what appears to be an automated campaign call using an AI voice that is designed to sound like President Biden, encouraging them not to vote in tomorrow's primary.
Hannah Cotter is joining us live now from Concord, where this appears to be targeting the group behind the Biden writing campaign. Hannah.
Steve, Jen, the AG's office is calling this a possible case of voter suppression, and concerns have been raised about how it may affect voter turnout for President Biden's supporters. The message went out yesterday, encouraging people not to vote on Tuesday, but instead to wait until the general election. Officials say it falsely appears to come from a political committee supporting the write-in Biden campaign, going as far as using former New Hampshire Democratic Party Chair Kathy Sullivan's phone number. The AG's office says this appears to be an unlawful attempt to disrupt the New Hampshire primary. They're encouraging anyone who received the call to disregard the message and to notify authorities. Take a listen.
Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again. Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday.
As if you have a limited number of votes, which is not true. And it may reduce the number of votes that Joe Biden gets tomorrow.
And a cybersecurity expert I spoke with earlier said that particular message has a few telltale signs. The words don't sound just right. There are a few unnatural pauses. He says those are typical in computer-generated messages. The White House says it's aware of the robocalls. What they have to say about it coming up in the next half hour. We're live in Concord. Hannah Cotter, WMUR News 9.
All right, Hannah, thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back. Now, by law, New Hampshire has the first primary despite the Democratic National Committee's decision this year to recognize South Carolina as first. So state Democrats are preparing to handle a large write-in campaign for President Biden.
Right, because of this, News 9 talked to the chairs of both state parties for their thoughts on the decision and also, more broadly, just the first in the nation contest.
Well, the party, neither the DNC or the state party, have no real role in the primary. It's completely conducted by state and local government, which is something that clearly the DNC just could not understand. We do not have the ability to stop it, move it, change it, do anything. Has nothing to do with us. The only role parties have is to allocate delegates after the primary. You can take away our delegates because that's not what the primary is about in New Hampshire. It might be elsewhere in the country, but it's not about the delegates. It's about the relationship we have with these potential candidates for president.
Now that's the Democrats, but Granite State Republicans have had an increasingly smaller pool to pick from as many major candidates have suspended their campaigns.
Well, this primary has very quickly narrowed down to a two-person race. And so Donald Trump, if he wins double digits, I think it's time for the Haley campaign to reassess. If Nikki Haley wins, then it's on to South Carolina, and then we'll see what happens there. So the Granite Staters can really have a huge impact on what happens next. Live free or die, let's go.
Live free or die, let's go. And let's turn to political director Adam Sexton for more on what those undecided voters might choose to do tomorrow.
Hi, you two. So first things first, this is a very different looking primary setting up.
Right, absolutely. And Steve and Jen, even though it looks very different, there is still that age-old question that needs to be answered, Scott, and that is, where are those undecided, undeclared, last-minute voters going to break to? We've seen in the polling that, Nikki Haley has a pretty good chunk of those. Yep. Trump does too. Yeah. And Haley's not making the biggest gains that she needs to make to get this into a single digit or win for her.
If so, ergo, that's why we believe the president is here in New Hampshire in the Lakes region tonight. The Lakes region, which is a big political hotbed for Republican votes for him. It is definitely Trump country up there. So he is doing strategically the very smart thing. Be here. Talk to your people, get them excited, because there is definitely an enthusiasm gap between the Trump campaign and the Haley campaign. There's a lot of energy here in the fourth quarter, but for weeks what we've seen is that voters are excited to vote for Donald Trump. They're still deciding on Nikki Haley. And to your point, I think they're breaking right now 50-50 with these undecideds. That doesn't help her a lot unless you can drive those undecideds out.
Right, and this has been a flurry of activity for Trump after a relatively lax 2023. He only came here a handful of times, and now his people are able to see him over and over again, which we haven't seen like that since 2016. Trump still has a pretty decent chunk of those undeclared voters, as we mentioned. I think it's somewhere in the 30% range. Now, his celebrity, his broad appeal, this makes him different than other races that we've seen, where I think, if you're Nikki Haley, you want to turn this into McCain-Bush, but Bush's appeal was much narrower than Trump. He's got a lot of people in that party who back him.
He does, and he's still filling the seats, and these visits are doing a great job of drawing his own people in and refocusing them and getting that energy building, while Nikki Haley is still doing that final lap, that very traditional New Hampshire primary type of campaigning, as many stops as possible, as many humans as possible, and doing it in a much more traditional way. She is very strong among those undeclared and independents. I mean, the polls are suggesting somewhere around 2/3 of independents are with her. So the question is, can she close the deal and close the perceived gap?
Right. Week out since the Iowa caucus, it was a dominating win for Trump. How much did he benefit from the sort of inevitability feeling that you get when you win by that much?
Yeah, I think a lot. And the polls are showing, the conventional wisdom right now shows that Nikki Haley is coming into this thing maybe double digits down, and her campaign knows it's got to be a single digit finish to be able to claim some type of momentum going into South Carolina. So the pressure's on her, but there's also pressure on an inevitability candidate too.
Right, that's true. You know what? And if she gets within 10, it's going to be a big story, because you see all those cable networks right now kind of almost writing the postmortem. If she can get close, it's a different story. One last question for you really quick. Yeah. Has Nikki Haley made the kind of authentic connection with New Hampshire voters that we've seen from other winners who pulled off big upsets?
Yeah, not to pick on accountants, but she likes to remind everybody she's an accountant, and we're waiting to see if she's made that warmth embrace. The last 48 hours has looked great, but there's still some questions about whether she's made the authentic connection. I don't know.
All right, we will see tomorrow. All right. Steve and Jen, back to you.
All right, Adam, Scott, thank you. And let's get a check of your forecast now, bringing in Chief Meteorologist Mike Haddad. And Mike, we could be watching out for some snow on primary night.
Yes, and the key there is night, right, Steve? Because if you're heading out to the polls tomorrow morning, midday, early afternoon, weather will not get in the way whatsoever. It's around 5, 6, 7 o'clock. A bit of light snow may make it a bit slippery out there. But right now, clouds are there. They're parting, and the snow showers are breaking apart. Well, what snow, you ask? Well, the stuff that was over our heads earlier in the evening that was drying up because the air was extremely dry. What we are tracking, however, for later tomorrow afternoon and early evening is lining up in the Mississippi Valley, anywhere from St. Louis and points south and west down to Arkansas. All of this rain eventually works in our direction, bumps into cold air, puts the two together, and that spells snow, generally on the lakeside. But again, not for tonight. A couple of flakes up north, but that's it through about, say, the pre-dawn hours of tomorrow morning. 20s north, 30s south. Here's a look at the First in the Nation primary forecast tomorrow. 8 a.m., roads in great shape. 20s for many, partial sun, clouds thicken up early in the afternoon, but dry through 3, 4 o'clock. Shortly after then, a few flurries southwest, and then 6, 7 o'clock, some light snow will begin to break out in southern parts of New Hampshire. So there's your hour-by-hour look in Concord. Notice how the flakes of snow really don't commence until after 5 or 6 in the evening. So the best bet, if you want to avoid any potential slippery going, get out and vote prior to 4 or 5 p.m. And even if you do have to travel after that time frame, the snow will be very light and crews easily can stay ahead of it. Quick look at the statewide map. Again, clouds are there midday, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. A couple of snow showers by 4, 5, 6 o'clock. And then eventually, as the night wears on tomorrow night, light snow will break out. I think the greatest impact on travel will actually be overnight into early on Wednesday. So timing maybe not perfect for late day, early evening voters tomorrow, but on average a lot better than it could be and better than it will be early on Wednesday morning. Back to you right now, Steve.
Okay, Mike, thank you. And we have much more ahead from the campaign trail in these final hours of the First in the Nation primary, including former candidates on stage with Donald Trump tonight.
And we'll retrace the steps of this unusual primary from the earliest campaigns to now the last few standing tonight.
Living in New Hampshire, you can't not pay attention to the primary.
A Granite State tradition with national effects. The First in the Nation primary process has sifted through dozens of presidential candidates ahead of tomorrow's election.
I've been following it since, I would say, since the end of August, beginning of September.
Tonight, those months of study are helping many New Hampshire voters make up their minds. Others using these final hours to choose their candidate.
I think that in order for us to be well represented, we need to represent ourselves.
This is a WMUR Commitment 2024 special, New Hampshire primary, the final hours.
And thank you for staying with us for this special edition of News 9 on the eve of the New Hampshire primary. Here we go. I'm Steve Botari.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Vaughn. No two primaries are ever alike, all making history in their own way. And this year, that is certainly true. The field of candidates has dwindled over these past few days and weeks, and one party is lobbying for write-in votes.
And the remaining candidates are spread out across the state today, trying to reach as many of those undecided voters as possible before the voting happens. Granite Staters casting their ballots tomorrow.
News 9 is also in every corner of New Hampshire, from the southern state line up to the North Country, and we will be checking in on all of the campaigns and the countdown to the very first votes in Dixville Notch. But we begin with WMUR's Jean Mackin, who has covered a few of these for us. And Jean, how does this compare to past primaries that you have experienced and known?
Yeah, well, in past years, we've had more than a dozen presidential hopefuls vying for your vote right now in the final hours. And this year, the number of candidates still standing is unique. Candidates arrived with high fives and handshakes, making it official, filing for president at the Secretary of State's office.
I'm confident that not only are we going to succeed in winning this Republican primary, but in delivering a landslide victory.
There you have, folks. It's official.
We feel the momentum on the ground in Iowa. We feel it in New Hampshire.
They came for conversations with the candidate.
We should hold all of our elected officials accountable for what they do.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Sunday morning segments of Close Up.
You want something to drink to start?
I would love some coffee.
Yeah.
Diner stops and backyard barbecues.
It's early, and I realized a long time ago I'm well known, but I'm not known well.
The Democratic National Committee made a stunning announcement. It would not recognize New Hampshire as the first primary, choosing South Carolina instead. By law, New Hampshire is going on with the traditional first in the nation primary, despite the DNC's threats.
Even though the DNC can take delegates from me, it cannot take from New Hampshire the significance of this primary.
Democrats campaigning for a write-in vote for Joe Biden, while in-person Democratic candidates say they're earning the vote on the ground. On the Republican side, former candidates lined up behind the party's frontrunner, Donald Trump.
When I'm president, America will be respected again like never before, just like never before.
One by one dropping out, even giving their endorsements to the former president right after. Nikki Haley, now the holdout major Republican candidate, coming in third in Iowa and fighting for a strong finish in New Hampshire. And both parties will fight until the polls close for New Hampshire's 344,000 undeclared voters. They can vote on either ballot. Jen and Steve.
Interesting to see all of the video of the candidates who are no longer in the primary, Adam. And as time ticks down now, an hour and a half to go before Dixville Notch casts those 6 ballots. And the candidates going to bed soon and thinking, okay, gave it all we could.
You know, and there's not much more they can do at this point. This is almost like a narrowing little piece of opportunity where you can sway people one way or another, and by the time we get to Dixville Notch and tomorrow morning, that's over. That outcome has potentially been diminishing with each passing minute and hour. You know, as you know, to Jen, it's about an hour from now we're going to see that vote. So Nikki Haley, though, sticking with the plan right now. It's been a whirlwind of retail stops alongside her ally, Governor Chris Sununu. She's been at bars pouring beers, a UNH hockey game, VFWs, restaurants, definitely trying to showcase a kind of regular guy or gal kind of appeal. People are seeing her in their own daily life context rather than in a more controlled campaign setting, and the goal is to reach and turn out voters who may not be as completely plugged into politics as someone who's really involved in the base of a party. Now, the frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, for a year he's relied on the power of his brand and that 4 years in the White House to really act as a fortress for him here in New Hampshire. He's held on to his support as other candidates have gone up and down, and he only had to make a handful of campaign visits in 2023 all year long. In a rare move for Trump, he's actually changing things up. He's been doing events almost every day or night here, rallies, speeches, even had a drop-in at his campaign headquarters. You can read this sudden burst of activity in two ways. One, maybe he's worried about how close Nikki Haley might get to him here. Or two, he wants to post a truly dominant number here, a big win like he did in Iowa, and try to end the primary contest here in the Granite State. Now, Nikki Haley has already scheduled an event in South Carolina after the primary, so she wants to move on. But Ron DeSantis also wanted to move on after a second-place finish in Iowa, and obviously he's no longer in the race. New Hampshire traditionally narrows the field. That's how this process works. But to have it down to 2 at this point, the decision, it's extraordinarily rare.
And we'll be talking about that for a while. Okay, Adam, thank you. And you mentioned the former president with the late event tonight. He is making his final pitch to voters on why he could and what he believes should return to the White House.
And we have WMUR's Marissa Tansino live there outside his last rally before the primary actually happened, before the voters go to the polls. This is in Laconia, Marissa.
Steve, Jen, that's right. And supporters here for the former president started to file in here at Laconia just after 6 o'clock. The former president taking the stage just after 9. And within the first 10 minutes of him speaking, really, he invited 3 of his former opponents up to the stage. That's Vivek Ramaswamy, Senator Tim Scott, and Doug Burgum. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy, even when he was running against Trump, always spoke out in support of him. They all encouraged people to vote for Trump tomorrow in the First in the Nation primary. The former president doing the same. He said tomorrow is an important day for people in New Hampshire and says he believes the state will speak louder than any other place in the country.
With your vote for our campaign on Tuesday, so important, most important vote you're ever going to take or make, you can declare that the Republican Party is never going to go back to those days of weak establishment candidates who preach cutting Medicare and Social Security at home while they spend trillions and trillions of dollars on endless wars all over the place in countries that you've never even heard of and countries that don't want us. It's a terrible thing.
Now, the former president also taking several shots at Governor Chris Sununu and Nikki Haley. The former president also saying up there tonight that he believes after tomorrow, Nikki Haley will be out of this race. We're live in Laconia. Marissa Tansino, WMUR News 9.
Marissa, thank you. Let's pick up this conversation right there. Nikki Haley was out and about all day today trying to give that final push before the primary.
WMUR's Ariel Metropolis also there tonight, and she's here now with us with more on the former governor's last-minute pitch to voters. What'd she say, Ariel?
Jen, Steve, this event here was really packed tonight, and it was so packed that they had to have an overflow room to get all the people who couldn't be inside the main room. We can show you some of our video from earlier in the night. This was really a crescendo of sorts for Haley, who's been campaigning across New Hampshire for nearly a year now. We first saw her in New Hampshire this campaign cycle in February of 2023, and since then she's held dozens of events, many of them just in the last week. She started off this week at the Mount Washington Hotel, and she slowly moved her way down the state. And voters tonight that we spoke with told us they're convinced she's the right choice.
Because she's exciting and she talks about things that you all believe in right now, and we want something different.
I've seen Nikki 8, maybe I think this is 9 times now, and I knew that tonight would be my last chance, whether or not she won.
We also spoke with several out-of-state voters tonight who said they just wanted to be here to witness this incredible primary process. We're live in Salem tonight. Ariel Metropolis, WMUR News 9.
Ariel, thank you. Republican candidate Ryan Binkley is also on the ground here in the Granite State in these final hours. The Texas businessman and pastor is primarily focused on federal spending, telling voters he has a 7-year plan to balance the budget.
I'm saying this, I will pay back the debt. Why don't we do that? Nikki Haley's not talking about it. President Trump's not talking about that.
Binkley earned just under 1% of the vote in the Iowa caucus.
And President Joe Biden's name will not be on the First in the Nation ballot tomorrow, but you will see 2 major Democratic challengers, author Marianne Williamson and Congressman Dean Phillips. Our Monica Hernandez in the newsroom now with the message they're hoping voters send to the incumbent.
Well, Jen, while both campaigns are considered to be a long shot, they are hoping for a boost in New Hampshire. The national political press is here, and they're getting much more attention now than for all the previous weeks of their campaigns. Congressman Dean Phillips telling voters today he is appalled that President Biden is skipping the New Hampshire primary and that he is running to ensure Donald Trump isn't reelected. But Phillips says no matter what happens in this race, he's already won. Here's why.
I think we've already won the New Hampshire primary because what's going to happen tomorrow is going to show a weak candidate who's not electable and a candidate with momentum going around the country sharing a new vision.
Meanwhile, Marianne Williamson saying she is the candidate who can beat former President Trump in November if he is the nominee. She says from her time on the trail in New Hampshire, she believes a lot of voters are waiting until the last minute to make up their minds. She thinks her economic agenda is what sets her apart.
An economic U-turn, a new beginning in this country, waging peace, taking care of our children, ending the drug war, turning the page, genuinely turning the page, not just with a new face, but with a new trajectory of policy and societal and economic unfoldment. This is what would not only beat Trump, this is what will repair our country. That's why I'm staying in the race.
As for Phillips, he says success for him when the polls close tomorrow in the Democratic primary would be finishing with at least 20% of the vote. Steve.
And we shall see about that. It was last year President Biden and the DNC overhauled the primary calendar and tried to remove New Hampshire as the first in the nation primary and replace it with South Carolina. But staying true to its 100-year tradition and, importantly, state law in this matter, New Hampshire scheduled its primary right after Iowa anyway. President Biden opted not to appear on the primary ballot, and the DNC has said New Hampshire violated national party rules, calling tomorrow's primary meaningless.
I don't agree with that assertion. I think the vote will be counted, regardless of what the DNC says. The DNC is like a paper tiger. They don't matter. What matters is what we do here in New Hampshire. So I've encouraged everybody to vote, regardless of whether they're going to vote in the Democratic primary or the Republican primary, whether they're young or older like me. I want everybody to vote.
Governor Lynch is one of the people backing a write-in effort on President Biden's behalf. And you know, some New Hampshire voters have reported receiving a robocall using an AI-generated voice. It was made to sound just like President Biden, encouraging folks not to vote in Tuesday's primary.
WMUR's Hannah Cotter live in Concord now, where the Attorney General's office is looking into this.
Well, Steve and Jen, voters tell me they're disgusted and appalled. The AG's office says this is a possible case of voter suppression.
Republicans think it's a prank, but we believe it's a crime.
Democratic leaders reacting to Sunday's fake robocall that used what appears to be a computer-generated President Biden voice to encourage people not to vote.
To tell people false information about an election, to me, is an unpardonable sin.
Former party chair Kathy Sullivan has been part of the write-in Biden effort. She says her number was included in the call.
Somebody wanted to hurt Biden. Somebody wanted to lower the number of votes he's getting tomorrow. But what it does tell me is that our effort to have people go and write in Joe Biden's name on the ballot is working, and it's scaring someone.
While parts of it may sound like the president,
voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to reelect Donald Trump again. Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday.
My immediate thought was that, yes, this certainly sounds exactly like President Biden, but I knew the message was wrong.
The White House confirms
that call was indeed fake and not recorded by the president.
Cybersecurity experts say you should always be skeptical of unexpected calls, but there are other signs to look out for.
If you listen to the call, you'll hear certain aspects of it are a little fuzzy. Some of the breaks aren't natural. They aren't the natural way a person would speak. That's a little bit of a telltale sign.
And again, President Biden is not on the ballot, nor has he campaigned here. But in a statement, a Biden-Harris campaign official said in part, quote, spreading disinformation to suppress voting and deliberately undermine free and fair elections will not stand. We're live tonight in Concord. Hannah Cotter, WMUR News 9.
Okay, Hannah, thanks. We still have much more ahead, including a live report from Dixville Notch. We are just over an hour away now from their midnight vote.
So stay with us.
I hope that the people of New Hampshire will give me a listen. Nobody knows who I am or what I stand for or what I've done yet.
We came into to New Hampshire, made deep friends here, and for all those reasons, we are going to win this thing.
I am looking forward to traveling around New Hampshire, sitting down in people's living rooms and coffee shops.
If we break through in New Hampshire, they're not going to be able to stop me.
What can I say? I love the people of New Hampshire.
You cannot buy an election in the state of New Hampshire, my dear friend.
This state is going to play as huge and prominent a role in nominating the next president of the United States as it always has.
Our thanks and our joy goes out to you, the people of New Hampshire. This is the first, and it sure is the best.
And from the diners to the living rooms to the coffee shops, the First in the Nation primary can make or break a campaign. We have seen it happen before.
And Granite Staters don't even wait for the sun to rise to start casting those critical ballots. Another New Hampshire tradition is midnight voting. Now, just over an hour away at this point.
It's close. WMUR's Ray Brewer live in Dixville Notch for tonight's vote. Tell us about it, Ray.
Well, Jen, they've been holding the midnight voting here in Dixville Notch since the presidential election of 1960 and for primaries since 1964. We're in a little bit different place. We're in the Tillotson House, which is named after the man who started the tradition of midnight voting. We'll take a look around. You can see there are the voting places, the voting booths, where the 6 voters, the 4 Republicans and 2 undeclared voters will fill out their ballots and then cast them in the ballot box that has been there since that 1960 election. Take a little bit more look around the room here, and you can see there where the votes will be tallied. Now, you just see the 3 names up there, but there is more room to write in names if other people get votes. And again, there are just 6 voters. And you can see the crowd that's gathered here. 6 votes haven't drawn this much attention unless maybe it's a U.S. Supreme Court case. But I've spoken to journalists from all over the world. There are journalists from Japan, the Philippines, and then there are also people here from Denmark. And then in terms of the voters themselves, this is something that they take very seriously.
First to vote in an extremely important election this year. Our little community is going to do our civic democratic process. 100% of the people will vote, and you'll know the results at about 12:15.
Now, normally we would be awaiting the results from 3 New Hampshire localities, but Millsfield opted not to hold midnight voting. Town spokesman said that there's just simply the population is getting a little too old to be out there at midnight. And Hart's location, the other one, with their 21 voters, well, they opted for the more reasonable time, 11 to 7. So truly tonight, all eyes will be on Dixville Notch.
And Ray, we know that the Balsams is undergoing this big renovation, so there is hope that 6 registered voters